Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. Special thanks to Shaughnessy Sullivan for sponsoring all of these programs for us. Okay, Robert Tree Paine Estate is a National Historic Landmark. So what exactly does that mean? If a building is a National Historic Landmark, it's a federal designation. It's administered by the Department of the Interior. There's only a limited number of buildings that qualify for that, and they have to be very, very significant in American history. So why would the Paine Estate be a National Historic Landmark? And by the way, Waltham has four. So we have the Gore Estate, the Lyman Estate, the Paine Estate, and the Francis Cabot Lowell Mill. And I think the Waltham Watch Company would also definitely qualify. It's a huge amount of work to nominate a building as a National Historic Landmark, but hopefully at some point someone takes that on. But why is the Paine Estate a National Historic Landmark? A lot of it is the collaboration of two men, and their names are right up here. H.H. Richardson, America's most famous architect, and Frederick Law Olmsted, America's most famous landscape architect. And together what they did is they worked together on the Paine Estate project, on building the Paine Estate, the addition to the Paine Estate, and they reimagined the relationship between architecture and the environment. And kind of an unusual picture to begin with. And I don't think most of you know the woman on the left, but I want to pay tribute to her. Her name is Dr. Margaret Henderson Floyd, a professor of art history at.
I'm sorry, Rachel's. Put this on.
Okay, that's okay. Okay.
Apology. Yes, that's my
Okay.
fault.
Professor of art history at Tufts University, author of dozens of books, and probably the leading expert in the country on Richardsonian architecture. And she was like a lone voice crying out in the wilderness way back in the 1960s. Before anyone in Waltham knew anything about the Paine Estate, she was saying, this is a building that is hugely important and it must be preserved. So there you have the academic voice. She's not a Waltham person. She lives in Weston. She loved Waltham. She loved the Paine Estate. And she's saying, we're going to do something. So what happened with the Paine Estate? It was given to Waltham in 1975. And over the years, it fell into a state of disrepair. Water was pouring through the roof. There were raccoons living in the attic. Floors had buckled. Fireplaces had caved in. And in 1985, I think you'll recognize the man on the right, that's Bill Stanley, who was elected mayor in 1985. And one of the key parts of his campaign was he promised, if elected, he would restore the Paine Estate. So here you have the academic person with the practical person. One of them couldn't do it alone. Both of them had to work together. And together they received federal grants, state grants, to begin the restoration of the Paine Estate. And today it's one of the most valuable resources we have in Waltham. So I always look at these two people working together. Their partnership is the reason we can have a program like this. Okay, two other men who neither of them ever came to Waltham, but I want to start the program here. The man on the left is Thomas Jefferson. And after the American Revolution, the Jeffersonian vision of the country, he favored an agrarian country, a nation of small farmers. He distrusted big cities. He believed in the farm life. And the man, his arch enemy, the man on the right, is, of course, Alexander Hamilton. He was arguing for a commercial republic based on industrialization and growth, almost an American empire. So what you had two visions of how the country should develop, competing against each other. And of course, the Hamiltonian vision, I don't think any of you are farmers. We're in the Hamiltonian vision today, a commercial, business-oriented republic. And that brings us to Waltham. Now, this is a famous painting. This is in Gore Place. And this is downtown Waltham. The brick building is the Boston Manufacturing Company, the Francis Cabot Lowell Mill. The small building right at the waterfall on the extreme left, that's Paul Moody's machine shop. This building right over here, that's a sawmill, but it was all part of the Boston Manufacturing Company. The houses you see in the distance, that would be the Waltham Common today. And I want you to imagine this picture without the brick buildings. So erase the brick buildings, and what are you looking at? You're looking at Jeffersonian America. You're looking at an agrarian nation of small farms. You see the stone wall in the front, built by farmers clearing their land. You see Prospect Hill in the back. You see the Charles River flowing by. But you see the beginning of Hamiltonian America intruding on Jeffersonian America. That's how I always interpret this. Look over on the far left, you see two men. Now, the artist who painted this, his name is Elijah Smith. I believe it was 1826 when he painted this. And if you look at one of the men, he's got his arm out. And I always imagine, like, what did the artist put him there for? And my guess is he's pointing with pride, saying, look what we did. Look at this building. Look at it was one of the biggest buildings in the United States when it was built. It's the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. 400,000 bricks were used to build that building. So he's pointing with pride to it. So what happens over the years? The mill expands. It goes right down the river. By 1911, the last expansion takes place. If you look at the giant chimney that you can see all over Waltham, that was the last expansion, the boiler house in 1911. So for 100 years, it's expanding. Houses are being built, stores are being built, churches are being built. What's happening to the landscape? It's disappearing. It's being obliterated. So what is the Industrial Revolution doing all over the country? It's impacting the environment. So if this is built in 1814, what did the area look like by 1960? Okay, now I purposely looked for the worst picture of the Boston Manufacturing Company I could find. But you can see that there is nothing in harmony with the environment there. I mean, some of you, I remember that when I was a little kid down Moody Street. Remember, Jerry? That's what it looked like down there. It was, it was like all diversified industries in there, and it was a wreck. Okay, and then just down the river, we get the Waltham Bleachery and Dye Works. So the Boston Manufacturing Company opens a mill, a bleachery to bleach their cloth down where Shaw's is today. And look at this painting. Now, this print was done in 1853. Erase the buildings, and once again, you're looking at Jeffersonian America. You can see some farm animals if you look carefully. See them over there, a couple of cows in the Charles River. And you see the boat with some young people in it, and you see nature. So what happens in the bleachery section of Waltham? It expands. And once again, mill expands, and houses come in, and associated industries come in. So by the 1950s, that's the Waltham Bleachery. It goes out of business in 51, and Raytheon ran it, and then it burned down in 1964. But obviously, there's no relationship with nature there. And then, of course, the other big factory in Waltham Watch Company. Now, this print was done in the 1870s. Once again, pretend the building's not there. And what do you have? Now, look at Mount Peak, a little bit of an exaggeration. We all know it's not as high as Mount Everest. But in the background, you see the mountains of Waltham. Charles River looks a little wider than it actually is. A steamboat going by. Steamboats did go up and down the Charles River. And you see trees. You see this idyllic landscape. And then the Waltham Watch Company comes in. And if you look at this, I'm going to show you a photograph taken at just about the same time. This is the original building of the Waltham Watch Company. It was made of cement. And then it's expanding. So this is the 1870s. This is an artistic print. This is the actual photograph. So you can see, once again, nature and industrialization are not in harmony. And I just put this in because I think it's a neat picture. Waltham Watch Company looking towards Boston. Way off in the distance, you can see the skyscrapers in Boston. Okay, so what's going on in America? You get a group of artists, they're called the Hudson River School. it's not a school, but it's just a group of artists, and they begin to celebrate the American landscape. It's under attack by industrialization. So these artists, they're going to the White Mountains, they're going out west, they're going to Niagara Falls, and they're glorifying the American landscape. This is one of my favorite paintings because it's one of my favorite places in New Hampshire where I hike. That's Crawford Notch. And this was done by Thomas Cole. And the little body of water there, it's still there. It's Saco Lake. That's the headwaters of the Saco River. And you're looking south towards North Conway. The Route 302 goes right through there if you've been there. So Thomas Cole presents this romanticized view of Crawford Notch. So these artists are alive with industrialization all over the country, and they're saying, let's look at our landscape. Europe might have cathedrals. Europe might have kings to paint. They might have queens. They might have castles. What do we have? We have something better. We have the landscape. We have the American Garden of Eden. We have this untouched landscape here. That's the White Mountains again. Famous painting by Thomas Cole. This is the Connecticut River. It's called the Oxbow. And over here on the right, you see kind of the Jeffersonian America. On the left, that's supposed to represent the American wilderness. And it's almost like a manifest destiny painting. So on the right, Jeffersonian America. On the left, where the clouds are, the dangers of the West, the untamed West. That's Thomas Cole again. And this painting, this is not the White Mountains. This is out in California. And it's a place I've never seen, but it's Mount Corcoran. And the man who painted this is Albert Bierstadt. So the two big artists who are glorifying the landscape, you've got Thomas Cole, you've got Albert Bierstadt. Now, why did I put a Bierstadt in there? Believe it or not, he came to Waltham and he glorified Waltham's landscape. And here's the painting. So this is in the Waltham Public Library. That's Fox Island. So if you go down to Forest Grove, if you go down to Ward Avenue, there's a little island out on the Charles River. You've got the old, where the beach used to be on the river, and you'll see Fox Island out there. And Nathaniel Banks met his wife there. So Albert Bierstadt painted for him this painting of Fox Island. It's a priceless painting. It's been restored. It's in the Waltham Public Library. Okay, so now we have to turn local. So what's going on? You've got industrialization, and then you have the artists saying, wait a minute, we've got to preserve the landscape. And then you've got the national government saying, we're going to set up some national parks. Yellowstone, 1872 was the first. Cities and towns begin to realize we're running out of open land. Prospect Hill Park, 1893 is established, close to 300 acres of land. Imagine Waltham without Prospect Hill. Imagine if the Highlands neighborhood just developed all over Prospect Hill. Imagine what the traffic would be like. You'd still be trying to get here. Beaver Brook Reservation, Waverly Oaks. So between Waltham and Belmont, 1893 again. And if you have any questions on this park, Marie Daly's the expert. Talk to her about it. She knows this park inside and out. And that's over at Waverly Oaks, the two duck ponds. Yeah, now that's part of Belmont today, but originally part of Waltham. I love this picture. This is Waverly Oaks Park here, but you think you're 20 minutes from downtown Boston. So cities and towns begin to say, we've got to put aside land because if we don't, the industrial revolution, we're going to lose everything. Okay, and now that brings us to the Payne estate. So Robert Tree Payne on the left. Who is Robert Tree Payne? The great-grandson of a signer of the Declaration of Independence, came from a prominent New England family, attended Harvard, became a lawyer, made a fortune in investments in railroads and in mining, retired at the age of 35 to become a full-time philanthropist, very interested in the rights of working people and helping the poor. and he marries Lydia Lyman. Lydia Lyman is the daughter of George Lyman, the owner of the Lyman estate. So they get married, and their wedding present is his house. You've all seen it if you've been to the Payne estate. This is the mansard part of the Payne estate. So George Lyman, Lydia's father, probably wants to keep her daughter and son-in-law close by and the grandkids close by. So he gives them a substantial amount of land and a house, a summer house. So this is where the Paynes begin, Robert Tree Paine and Lydia Lyman Paine, they begin summering. And then they have kid number one, kid number two, they have 7 kids. And the building, it wasn't big enough. And George Lyman dies in 1882. When he dies, Lydia comes into a substantial amount of money. So now they say, let's add on to our house. Let's add on to our summer house. They contact America's greatest architect, H.H. Richardson. Everyone associates him with New England. He's from Louisiana. He attends Harvard. He studies architecture in Paris. He ends up relocating to New England. Big man, 350 pounds. He ends up dying at the age of 48 of kidney failure. Everything he did is bigger than life. He was bigger than life. His buildings are bigger than life. Any building he took on had cost overruns. He didn't think small. He's not looking to like, how do we save $1 here or $1 there? Everything he always thinks large. So they contact Frederick Henry Hobson Richardson. And this is not how he actually dressed. This is a whimsical portrait of him dressed as a monk because he really liked medieval architecture. But even this, you can get an idea how big this man is. That's not like a little Dunkin' Donuts medium coffee. That's, a big beer stein there. This is a man of fancy tastes, and, he liked to live life large. And his greatest building, of course, is in Boston, Trinity Church, considered one of the great buildings in the country. Imagine what it cost. I don't know the answer to that, but what it cost to build Trinity Church. And when the Paynes contact Richardson, and by the way they got to know him is Robert Tree Paine was the chairman of the building committee for Trinity Church. That's how he met Richardson. He contacts Richardson to build the addition. Richardson contacts Frederick Law Olmsted. And they were neighbors in Brookline. They had worked together on other projects. And Olmsted is most famous, of course, Central Park in New York. He designs that. Central Park in New York. Imagine New York with, fill all that in with skyscrapers. Imagine New York without Central Park. Central Park. And he also designs the Boston Emerald Necklace. Richardson and Olmsted have similar views on nature. Both of them, and it's very current today. Both of them believe that nature heals. That, sometimes we read articles today that people working with young people who are in therapy for depression and things like that, they say, forget about the drugs. Get out into the woods. Go for a run. Go into the woods. Get back to nature. And way back in the 1800s, Richardson and Olmsted are saying the same thing. They're saying that to be healthy in body and mind, you have to get outdoors. That you have to get out in the environment. So there's the Boston Emerald Necklace in Boston and Brookline. So now they come to Waltham. And the first thing that Olmsted says is, let's move the house. So that's the mansard house on the left. That's the original house that was way down near Beaver Street. So they put it on railroad tracks and using oxen and horses. And imagine how difficult this would be. They drag it up the hill and put it on the bluff where it is now. Why do they do that? Well, you get the breeze. And looking south, you get a tremendous view of the Charles River Valley. You can see all the way to Needham. You can see the big radio towers down by Muzzy Ford when you stand there. So you get this wonderful view. So Olmsted says, let's move it up there. And then Richardson is going, the Richardson addition begins with the stones. So the Richardson addition is this, and that's the original house there. Okay, so they want the house to blend in with the landscape. This is a new idea. The house is going to look like it's growing out of the ground. So how do you accomplish that? Well, first of all, look at the building materials. Giant boulders quarried on the site are used to build the house. So what does New England have a lot of? Rocks. If you doubt that, try to dig a garden. The minute you put the spade in, you're going to hit a rock. What else does New England have a lot of? Trees. And you'll notice the wood shingles on the house, they're not painted, so natural wood shingles and boulders. What else makes this one with the landscape? Notice it's horizontal. It hugs the landscape. It hugs the hill. And if you look right over there, and you'll see this in a few other pictures, they put in, when Richardson designs it, he has recessed porches. So if you're in that porch there, you see the two large doors. If you're in there, it's kind of like it's an intermediary space between interior and exterior. When I was teaching, we're going field trips here, I'd have all the kids cram in there, and I'd say to them, okay, are we outside or are we inside? And they'd think for a minute. I'd say, you've got a roof over your head. There's an open wall in front of you. Are you outside or are you inside? And that's kind of what Richardson was trying to get across, that he's merging the house with the landscape. And there's another intermediary space right in there. You think that would be a major door? It's not. It's kind of Richardson's signature, the Roman-esque arch. And you go in there, there's a little place to sit, and then there's a little tiny door that goes into the summer parlor. And right here, this terrace, that's designed by Olmsted. So Olmsted designs the terrace, he designs the retaining wall, he designs the gardens. He's advising Richardson on the building. Originally, the original sketches did not include the boulders. That was added on. It was going to all be wood shingles. And you get a good view there of the intermediary spaces I was just mentioning. Okay, so here is Robert Tree Paine. And he's out on the terrace. So I think today you might call this a deck. You'd have a deck. So he's outside, but he's still in a living space. And it's kind of sealed off with the stone wall behind him. Okay, so take a look here. So on the far left, there's the mansard house that they moved up the hill. Then you see the Richardson addition. You see the Olmsted design gardens and walls. And right over here, you see a giant rock. The kids call that whale rock. It almost looks like a whale, but it was called Glacier Rock. And I would bet today, if some multimillionaire was building this house and they came to that rock, blast it. They'd say, get this out of here. Let's put in a garden. Let's put in a lawn. Let's get chem lawn up here. What does Robert Tree Paine do? He says, no, we're going to incorporate that into the design of the house. So that becomes part, the rock flowing into the walls, flowing into the house. It unifies the house with the landscape. This is a nice picture because I think it really gets across the relationship of the house to the land. And you get this feeling it grows out of the land. Okay, that over on the far left, that's a Roman arch. Roman arch is curved at the top. The Gothic is the one that has the point at the top. And if you look inside it, there's a bench there. So it's another place you can be outside and inside at the same time. And some of the Payne women at Glacier Rock, it was a place they took a lot of the photographs there. Payne even has Richardson put a sundial on the house. And watches exist, yes. Waltham Watch Company is in its heyday in 1886 when this house is finished. I'm sure Paine had expensive pocket watches. Once again, nature, the power of nature to tell time. So he has a sundial put on the house. A little further back view. Okay, we're going down the field now. This is the south field. We're going down towards the Da Vinci Circle. And you can see, it does look like a whale, doesn't it? There's glacial rock there, and you can still see the lines on glacial rock where the glacier went across it and carved it out. And look at this wall here. That wall, Paine actually built a wall, and he didn't consult Olmsted. And Olmsted came up and looked at it, and he didn't like it. He was upset. I don't like this. And he kind of chewed out Paine for not consulting him, and he said, take it down, and Paine did. I don't know how much money it cost, but imagine having that kind of money that you build the wall, and then your landscape architect says, I don't like it, and you tear it down, and then Olmsted designed that. So you're out in the field, this is the wall, but look at how the building's coming out of the wall. Okay, I want to go back. See that pine tree? That's a white pine. It used to have a twin, but the twin came down in a storm a few years back. Over 100 years old. And when you look at a lot of the old pictures of the Payne estate, you'll see the same tree 100 years ago, just about that size. There it is there. And every year, Paine had working men and working women in Boston come out and invite them to his house and have a big outing for them. So some of the people he championed in Boston coming out to Waltham. And also notice the ivy growing up the house. The house is one with the landscape. Payne stayed in the winter. And you can see the Olmsted design wall, the sundial, the natural materials. And when I used to show this picture to the kids in school, I'd always say, okay, so what is wrong here? And say it again? Yeah. So you've got to, what's the enemy of a house? Moisture. You've got to keep the moisture away from the house. You've got to clean your gutters. I know I did that, you know, when I was a kid. I'm always up on my father would say, go up there and get all the leaves out of the gutters. And if it's not, you're going to have ice. They'll look at the water. And sure enough, there was a substantial damage to that porch because the gutters weren't taken care of. And because they weren't taken care of, it cost the city money. Another nice picture. You can see a little bit of snow on the Payne estate. Look at this, how this fits with the landscape. And then you go, Wayne took these pictures right here, going down the hill, rock, look at the house just peeking out horizontal. Compare this with the Lyman estate. And do you see how it has a completely different feel to it? And if one of them's not right and one of them's not wrong, it's just two different ways of looking at things. This is designed by a guy named William Bell, the landscaping, and it's a flowing lawn. It goes down to Chester Brook, and there were swans swimming there, and there was a marble bridge that went over the. It's a whole different approach to landscaping than what you see at the Payne estate. This is more what you see today. When, you know, I always would say to the kids in school, how many of your families are obsessed with the front lawn? And hands would go up. And yeah, my father's out there digging out weeds and watering and chem lawn, and Richardson, Paine, Olmsted are not into that. Lyman, that's what Lyman would have liked. Same with the Gore estate. A whole different feel to the landscaping. Okay, so quickly, we'll just go inside the Payne estate here. So the picture on the left, you can see that this is where the two houses meet. So the Richardson addition, the stone addition, is on the left. The mansard house is on the right. The porch is built to disguise where the two houses come together. The porch up above, the second story porch, you can't get out onto it. The only way you can enter that porch, you have to climb through a window. So that is kind of, it's a way to combine the two houses. The next time you're at the Payne estate, take a look at the column. And once again, when I bring kids here, I'd say, how many of you can find any connection to nature in this porch? And it's not looking around. Just move over here. You can't see it that well. You make out a lion's head right there. There's a lion there. If you look at the columns here, you're going to see a floral motif. You've got the stones and everything else. So even the porch, even the entryway is designed to be in harmony with nature. Door knocker. That's kind of neat. A couple of gargoyles there. And yet you go inside, and the colors inside completely different than what you'll see at Gore Place or the Lyman Estate or most mansions. They're earth tones, they're fall colors. You're going to see reds. You're going to see, there's actually a hallway that has a blue ceiling like the sky. So you're going to see colors that blend in with nature. Also, just be looking at the wood. All natural wood, oak wood. The most important room in the house is the Great Hall. Once again, Richardson designs all of this. There was a Harvard architect, and the staircase is famous. It's called the Great Staircase. He compared that to a mountain cataract, a river rushing down a mountain. And you look at it, you say, oh, okay, I can see that. That stairway was so large that my friend Tom Grinnell and I, we used to run different events for seniors at Waltham High School, and we ran a senior social, we ran a Halloween party, and at the end of them, we'd always take all the kids, you probably have your grandkids on the picture there, that they'd all go on the stairs. We would fit 125 kids on that staircase for a picture. Think of your stairways at home. Do any of you have a staircase that fits 125 people at one time? You know, and it just shows the, you know, Richardson is designing this massive building here. At a different angle, but if you look on the far left, you'll see a fireplace here. I'm going to show you a couple of close-ups of that. Natural wood, earth tones. Look at the large windows and the large door to bring the environment into the building. Okay, and this is the fireplace that I just mentioned right here. And I want you to look right here. It's right there, and on the other side will be another column. But take a look. That's the picture on the column. Isn't that nice? Now, this one on this side they're both different. So you assume they're both going to be the same. They're both different, but and that was carved. They don't know who carved it. Some local craftsman carved that image into the fireplace. Okay, compare this. Oops. All right, compare this fireplace. Now we go to the Lyman Estate. And this is probably similar to what you had. This is federal design. Look at the color. The colors are almost like they're light, they're airy. That's typical federal architecture. The white fireplace. If you looked at the hearth, you'd see there's urns. I think there's a chariot on this. That's federal architecture. That's not for Richardson. It's painted white. A whole different feel when you go into the Robert Tree Payne estate. Summer parlor. Paint, by the way, on the interior was put on using sponges. In the Great Hall, there are 8 layers of paint that were put on with sponges and shellac to make it almost looks like leather. Once again, the summer parlor, but these massive open spaces. Right through here, that's Mr. Payne's study. And the woodwork, you'll see all of these floral motifs on the woodwork. Once again, the doorways and the windows, letting light in, letting air in. Mr. Payne's study. kind of an interesting room. When he was in Boston, even though he was retired, he had a constant stream of people interrupting him. And what are they looking for? He was on 60 committees, retired, 60 committees. He'd be active here right now, Wayne, if he was in Waltham, he'd be on the Historical Society. And he's active doing all these different things. And he'd come to Waltham and it was a place to get away. And in his study, it's positioned so he can look out the windows and see anyone coming up the driveway towards the hill. And in the door, if you look carefully in the door, the interior door, he's got a little peephole drilled through, so he could look through and see like what's going on out there. Probably a way to avoid people he didn't want to see.
Is that room upstairs or?
That's on the first floor, right off the summer power. This is a really neat room downstairs. This particular room, it's in the stone tower. It's called the Bow Parlor. And nice fireplace. Look at the marble there and little places to sit. And I spoke with, when I got involved with the Historical Commission years ago, there was a woman who was related to the Paynes. Her name was Biz Painter. And we were walking through the house. And we went into this room and she said, so what do you call this room? And I said, the Bow Parlor. And she said, do you know why? And I said, well, it's shaped like a bow. It's in the tower. And she said to me, no, it's where we entertained our beaux, our boyfriends. And she said when she was a young girl, she'd sit there with her boyfriend and around the corner would be the grandparents and her parents, but it was kind of a nice little private place that they could sit and be alone. Same room, the Bow Parlor there, but look at the detail. And once again, focus on the colors here, the earth tones and things in harmony with nature. This is the autumn parlor right here. And this was a room they go to in the fall. It only has one window and it only has one wall that faces outside, so it would hold the heat in. And the portrait there, that's Robert Tree Paine. And that was painted by an English artist, Hubert von Herkimer. And that's Lydia Lyman Paine, his wife, over on the left. Okay, this is now it's the dining room. And this is in the mansard part of the house. Originally, this would have been the living room. And the interesting thing here, if you look at the woodwork, I'm going to show you some close-ups there. What's engraved in the woodwork? Squirrels, birds, gargoyles, foliage. And I want you to look at the fireplace. When I was on the Historical Commission, Margaret Floyd said to me, and I don't know if this is, if she was just surmising this or what, but she said that fireplace came from Switzerland. Mr. and Mrs. Paine went on a vacation. They went, when the house was being remodeled, they went to Europe. And Paine found this fireplace, this hearth, and he sent it back to Waltham. And Margaret Floyd said to me, Richardson must have been horrified to think that was going in his house. It doesn't fit Richardsonian architecture. So according to Margaret Floyd, the agreement was we'll put that in the old part of the house, not in the Richardson addition. That's part of the woodwork. Imagine carving that. Imagine having the money to have someone carve that. The woodwork. And here's the staircase, and you walk up the stairs, and you come to the landing. This was kind of like Mrs. Payne's sitting room right here. If you look at the fireplace, can you see what's on the tiles? Birds, once again, foliage, nature. And if you go up to Mrs. Payne's bedroom, so it's called Mrs. Payne's bedroom. There's Mr. Payne's bedroom, but they did share, they had 7 kids, they shared a bedroom. But off the bedroom is a porch. And if you go out on the porch, you're looking down towards downtown Waltham there. So a great place for coasting, or, you look at this, you think you're up in New Hampshire or Vermont, you know, you're half hour from Fenway Park and you're in Waltham here. Same view in the summer. If you look over on the left, there's Glacier Rock right there. So it's a beautiful room up in the corner of the Richardson addition. So today, architects don't have the same desire to incorporate nature into architecture. And I would argue it's almost the reverse. They, you know, think of your typical shopping mall. You know, there is absolutely no effort blend to make the building one with nature and have them in harmony. I don't think 100 years from now, someone's going to be giving a talk on BJ's architecture. Could be wrong.
It's like a firehouse.
Yeah, it's just ugly, ugly. This is a great picture of Costco. Even the people with the masks just add to the bleakness of it. But look at not a tree to be seen, everything paved over. It's functional, it works, but it does nothing to build a sense of community. And I wanted to end with this picture. So this is Waltham High School. And I was up there today. And I think the architect did some nice things to make the building fit the landscape. First of all, it's 4 stories high, but it's horizontal. So it's right at the top of a hill. You can see Boston from the building. And if you drive up the road right here, all through here are boulders, giant boulders. So the easiest thing, or I'm sure, you know, maybe someone at some point said, you know, get them out of there. They left all the boulders there. Trees were planted in this green space. Building is built of brick as opposed to, you know, Kennedy Middle School. I don't know what the building material is, but it's not natural. It's blue and it's plastic or something. But this is a, you know, a natural building material. And in the back, you see that green field? So that's a parking deck. So on top of the parking deck is a ball field. So the architect, and you can see, surrounded by woods. So at least the architect made some attempt to blend the building in with nature. So I think we owe Robert Tree Paine and his wife and his family a debt of gratitude. Without them, right now there's 150 acres of land there. Once again, how many houses can you fit on an acre? 5, 6? Put 600 houses there, try to get up and down Beaver Street, try to get up and down Lexington Street. And we're so fortunate that, you know, 9 miles from Boston, we have something owned by the city of Waltham, permanently conserved. Waltham cannot decide to sell it or put housing or anything else, permanently concerned. So I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Robert Tree Paine, his family, Richardson, and Olmsted. Anyone have any questions?